Live from Lagos, Nigeria, this is Lunchtime Politics. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga, bringing you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Let's get to the headlines. Nigerian headline inflation rises by 1.05% year-on-year to 24.23% for March 2025. Food inflation now 21% according to latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics. Is Benue at war as death toll rises from Tuesday evening attack on Otobi, the local government area, to 11 persons. Thanks again for joining us on the program. A lot is happening in politics and in the polity as far as insecurity and disagreements are concerned. Right here at midday, we'll give you the all-access pass to the happenings in the polity. Let's begin with what's playing out in our economy. Just yesterday, the headline inflation was out, showing that there's a climb to 24.23% in March, marking the first uptick since the recent rebasing and defying analysts' expectation of a slowdown, just like we recorded between January and February. The latest consumer price index data released by the National Bureau of Statistics shows a notable rise from the 23.18% recorded in February. A brief highlight of the NBS's record shows that the country's food inflation slowed to 21.79% last month, down from the previous 23.51%, while the core inflation jumped to 24.43%, up from the 23.01%. At the same time, the urban inflation stood at 26.12%, while rural inflation rose to 20.89% last month. And away from economic numbers, the aftermath of the brutal attack by suspected headers in Benue State continues to unfold with a rising death toll. This morning, 11 people are now confirmed dead following a violent attack on Otobi community within Otukpo local government area by suspected header militia. Meanwhile, the Deputy Governor of the state, Samode, representing Governor Hyacinth Alia, was in Otobi earlier today to conduct an on-the-spot assessment of the situation and offer the government condolences. He reassured the community of the state's commitment to combating the rising insecurity in the state. The Deputy Governor announced cash donations for initial relief efforts, and the State Emergency Management Agency has been instructed to assess needs and deliver emergency assistance. And of course, the lawmaker representing Otukpo Ankpa Federal State Constituency, Mr. Kennedy Angbo, who spoke on Channels Television's breakfast program, The Morning Brief, says all hands must be on deck to ensure that the people do not suffer this fate, and something has to be done to protect the citizens of that area.
PM to past 7, 8 o'clock, headers invaded Otobi community and shot at people. They came in different companies and attacked from different flanks. But I can confirm to you this morning that one corpse was found, and it brings the total number of those of victims so far to 11. Clearly, Benue is at war. The headers are at war with Benue. They are coming to take our lands. They are coming to kill people, drive people from their farmlands, and uproot our crops and feed it to their cattle. That's the dire situation. That's how terrible it is. And the situation in Otobi, particularly this one, is very appalling. It's gory. So what we are doing right now is to draw the attention of the world, the attention of Mr. President, and also the IG of police and all the security agencies to send in personnel to Otukpo to Zone C, to Benue State, to be able to curb this issue. And so we need to begin to go back to the drawing boards and begin to ask ourselves, what exactly do we need to do? And I have offered my own opinion. My opinion is that communities must be engaged, communities must be equipped, and we must pass a legislation that allows for communities to defend themselves. Anything short of that, we would come back again and we'll talk about what are the subnationals doing, what is the federal government doing.
Very direct words there from the member representing Otukpo Ankpa state constituency in Benue State, people defending themselves. And that says it's not just in Benue, it seems to be Benue and Plateau this period. And this is the middle belt, as we call it, or the north central region. Now, following that attack in Zike a day ago, which led to the death of 54 persons, communities in Plateau State have been urged to cooperate with security agencies by providing vital information and to remain vigilant in monitoring activities in their domains. The governor of the state, Caleb Moftuang, while on a condolence visit to commiserate with the people of Zike community, actually apologized to the grieving families and admitted government's inability and failure to safeguard the lives and property of the people.
If I will tell you the truth, I myself, I have been crying since yesterday because I had trusted God that all the arrangements were put in place, that this will not happen again. We have made investments in security, but like all human arrangements, sometimes they fail. And I want to admit that on Sunday night into Monday morning, we failed you. Please forgive us.
All right, so that's exactly the mood of this place. Places like Plateau and Benue, quite a very sad situation. So on the Plateau, as at the last count, over 100 people have been killed, murdered in less than 2 weeks. We don't have all the official numbers from Benue State, but yesterday evening, that attack happened in Otobi, in Otukpo local government, and we've had all this conversation with the people involved. We hope that the government can step in to bring some level of some level of protection and rebuild confidence in the ability of government to protect our citizens, which is enshrined in Section 14 of the Constitution. But we'll switch gears from those two states and head to Delta State. It's been a brewing situation. Now, it's not a new issue, but a Supreme Court judgment had actually brought a new dimension to it about the Warri federal constituency, which has to do with delineation, more like some kind of mapping, political mapping in a way so that INEC will be able to conduct election, they will decide polling units and wards and all of that. So Warri federal constituency is made up of 3 local governments: Warri South, Warri Southwest, and Warri North. And predominantly the people that reside in this area are the Shakiri people, the Ijaw people, and the Urhobo people. Now, the delineation of the INEC, of the Electoral Commission now, has now generated a lot of uproar because, for instance, the Shakiri people are not comfortable with what is playing out. Initially, it was the Warri people that had maybe raised concerns about how it has been done. Now, that ended up in court, and now this has brought in another issue. So, before now, Warri North, for instance, had 10 wards. Warri South, I think, had 12, and Warri Southwest had 10. But all of that has now increased from the initial 32 in all to about 54 or so, an additional 25. So they've increased. But what it looks like right now, Ijaw may be having about 27 of those wards, while the Shakiri will be having about 21, and Urhobo will be having 9 of those wards. And this has generated a lot of issue, back and forth. All the focal persons have been speaking. But we're here to look for a way and a path to peace. INEC has said we're not done with this. Whatever complaints you have, bring it to us, because we have not given a final verdict on this particular issue. We've been joined in the program by a legal practitioner, Mr. Eric Omare, joining us from Abuja studio. Mr. Omare, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, Ms. Almari, I have listened to literally all sides. I think the only people that haven't spoken, perhaps they don't have issues with this, I do not know, are the Yoruba people. It looks like this delineation, the friction that is generated is more between the Ijaws and the Shekiri people. And the Shekiri people, in their assertion, and one of their focal persons we had a conversation with, is that whatever is going on now is going to affect them in terms of political representation. They've already been screaming that since 1999, for instance. They haven't had the opportunity to produce a senator in that region. And this is even going to marginalize them even further. What is, does the Ijaw have a new position apart from what we're familiar with?
Well, I don't think the Ijaws have a new position other than to say that there is a judgment of the Supreme Court of Nigeria decided on the 2nd day of December 2022, and the terms of that judgment has to be implemented to its latter. What are the terms of that judgment and the background to that judgment? The issue was that in the Warri federal constituency, in the days preceding the present democratic rule, around 1997-98, delineation was done arbitrarily without regard to the rules that govern delineation. So there have been a consistent protest for so many years. INEC didn't attend to that protest. So at the end of the day, a set of people from that constituency decided to approach the court, led by Honorable George Timinimi, and that at the Federal High Court, they did it, they lost, Court of Appeal, they lost at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with them. And what was their case? Their case is that, look, in the Warri federal constituency, instead of places that have higher population, having higher wards and polling units, you have places with lesser population. In some cases, places that don't exist. There are fictitious wards and units in the Warri federal constituency. And the Supreme Court said, look, we have looked at this case. We think that the appellants have a case. INEC, go back and do fresh delineation. I must emphasize the word fresh, and this is a key to all the agitations that are going on. Now, the implication of that order of the Supreme Court is that INEC is going back to ground zero to do delineation in accordance with the judgment of the Supreme Court, which says that it must be fresh delineation, and in accordance with its rules. Now, when it comes to delineation, especially electoral wards, or what is referred to as registration units, what is the criteria? The primary criteria by the INEC guidelines, which I have here, which are in consonance with the 1999 Constitution and the Electoral Act, is the population of the areas. That's the primary criteria. And because when the people who went to court, when we got to the court, part of our argument is that you have fictitious wards that don't have human beings living in those places. Units that people don't exist. One attached house can have up to 30 to 20 units. So, INEC, you must ensure that going forward, delineation must be based on physical presence and population. So INEC decided to come up with the idea of fieldwork. Fieldwork essentially means that they go around to confirm everything that is on ground in the Warri federal constituency. And as a prelude to that, the different ethnic nationalities, the Ijaw, Shekiri, and Urhobos were asked to submit what they call settlements or their settlements or communities list. And that was submitted to INEC. It was on the basis of the submission by the different ethnic groups that INEC went around this area. And on the 4th of this month, April, INEC came back and submitted what they refer to as a report. That is, this is what we saw on ground. And on the basis of what we saw, this is our recommendation. And just like you observed in your intro, INEC said, look, if you have observations, bring up your observation, which some groups I'm aware of, like the Ogbejon people in Warri Southwest have done. Some of that group have also done. But what I find strange is people going to block oil facilities, blocking federal highways because of a report presented by INEC on the basis of what they saw. I think that is unnecessary and is condemnable. Now, is there anything, why the fear? It is understandable. Over the years, what has been happening in Warri, it can be best described as minority rule over majority, with due respect to whoever may have contrary view. So what the INEC report has reviewed is the population strength of the different areas. In Warri Southwest, obviously, the Jones are in majority. In Warri North, they are in majority. In Warri South, the Robos are in majority. That is a fact that those who live in that area are aware of. And that is the preliminary fact that the INEC report has reviewed. There may be need to look at some other intricacies within the report. But on the whole, what INEC presented represents the geographical spread of different ethnic nationalities.
Mr. Mari, this is a very, very sensitive issue, and we'll stay within the context of the conversation. So, because it depends on who you are listening to. In fact, some have even said that we cannot even discuss this issue of delineation and what and all of that without looking at the historical context of how even the Warri Kingdom came to be, bringing on all of these ethnic nationalities. So let our viewers in on some of the things that the Insecurity people are agitated over, and I would like your response. So, for instance, for Warri Southwest, the old structure, which had about 10 wards, had Ijaw people having 4 wards and the Insecurity people having 6 wards. But the new proposed structure, which has now been increased from 10 to 19, Ijaw have 14 and the Insecurity have 5. And if we go down to Warri North, before now, Ijaw had, out of the 10, Ijaw had 4 wards, Insecurity has 6 wards. But the new delineation, which has now been increased from 10 to 18, Ijaw has 10, Insecurity has 8. And then Warri South, if we go back to the previous one that the Insecurity people had agitated over, the very old one, the Insecurity had 8 wards when it was 10 wards. 8 wards, Yoruba had 2. But with the one that was increased to 12, the Insecurity had 6, Urobo had 6. And this new one by INEC, Insecurity has 8, which has now been increased from 12 to 20. Insecurity has 8, Urobo has 9, Ijaw has 3. I read out this so that the audience can follow, and also, as I read this, are you seeing where the Insecurity people are coming from in terms of their agitation? Do they have a point? Because you're brothers. Let's be very clear on that.
No, yes. You see, let me explain. And I'm very happy. I'm excited that you raised that point. You see, that issue of what they call old words have been consistently referred to because people refuse to accept the reality of the judgment. And what is the reality of the judgment? The judgment says, go and do fresh delineation. What that simply means is that whatever you had before in local palace, we say old things are passed away. The fresh delineation ordered by the Supreme Court is not to be implemented by INEC with reference to what they had before. It is not a review. There's a world of difference when you are doing constituency delineation between a review and fresh. Because at the time we were preparing these court processes, we had a clear idea of the problem of delineation in the Warri area. So we went to the court and deliberately asked for fresh delineation. Fresh delineation means we are going back to the basis. Whether one person had 20 words before, 30 words before, it's of no moment in this fresh process. What is important is the physical structures on ground, and most importantly, the population dynamics as provided by the relevant authorities. So it means that it's possible for you to have 20 words before. You can end up with 1. It's also possible for you to have 1 word before. You can end up with 20 because it is a fresh delineation based on population and other criteria that INEC has brought out. And that point is very important because I listened to a lot of their interview where they said that, oh, I was having 6 words. So why is it that it is being reduced? Yes, because that 6 words that you had before was done without regard to the criteria. And let me also make this point. When people go to court, they go to court because there is a problem. And courts like especially the Supreme Court, when the judgment is delivered to solve a problem. In the case of Warri, the issue was that wards and units were arbitrarily allocated without reference to population and existing structures. So that was the problem this judgment meant to solve. So you do not expect INEC to go back and build on the faulty foundation, which the Supreme Court has said, go and correct. It's just like saying, look, this house foundation is wrong. Go and build it afresh. You cannot build the house on that foundation that has been identified to be wrong. So the question of the words that you had before is of no moment as far as this process is concerned. As far as I'm concerned, on the street, yes, on the street implementation of the judgment, It's possible for you to have a unit. If you go to that place, that unit don't exist. If there's something existing in that place, that unit ought to be cancelled. That is the implication. And in my opinion, from my knowledge of that terrain, there are a lot of such units that ought to be cancelled. And INEC needs to be very bold in doing that. The records are there. If you go and check INEC last beavers.
All right, Mr. Marif, if you allow me to come in.
It's a waste of national resources. Units that people don't exist in those places, you have them in INEC records. On the day of election, they will carry so many materials to those places, nobody will vote, they will bring them back.
All right, Mr. Marif, if you allow me to come in. All right, okay. Because when we had a conversation with one of the focal persons, he said he's accusing INEC literally, if I remember and heard him correctly, that INEC did not follow his own guidelines. So, for instance, Helper, you're a lawyer, so I'm sure you understand this.
Yes.
For instance, the argument was, one of the arguments put forward was how each word was decided. So, for instance, let me just use an hypothetical situation. That in the Insecurity situation, let's say 4 polling units were able to put a lesser number, let's say more communities or more polling units were used to make up a ward, while lesser polling units were used to make up a ward in the just scenario. Do you understand my drift?
Yes, I do.
Did you observe that in any shape or form? If you can answer that in 10 seconds so that I can throw in my next question.
It all depends on the population dynamics. And that's why I said that all those old polling units that have been referred to is a wrong foundation. In my view, some of those polling units ought to have been cancelled. INEC has no business retaining polling units because they existed before. If there are no human beings in those places, why are you retaining them? What is important is the population of the area, not whether you had 20 polling units before or you had 30 polling units before. Most of those polling units you are talking about are fictitious polling units that do not have anybody existing in those places. So it is possible for you to have lesser polling units and have more electoral wards in a particular area, depending on the population dynamics of the place.
All right, Mr. Mare. So, how were the job people disadvantaged, and how has this been able to fix explicitly? I know you said certain things in passing, because right now the Insecurity people are saying to produce a local government chairman, produce a member of the House of Reps. Of course, Senate they have not produced. This is going to even be more difficult for them. So for you, how has this helped you? Because it looks like whatever INEC is doing may not give closure. And what we're seeing in terms of agitation, we don't want this to escalate. This is why we're still bringing this to the table so that it can be resolved as much as possible.
Thank you for this question. I will handle all the two aspects. First, how were the Jones disadvantaged? Let me give you the background. In 1996, what is today known as Warri Southwest Local Government Area was created as Warri South Local Government Area. And 10 electoral wards were delineated for the local government area, made up of the John Kingdoms of Ogbejong, Barabatu, Isaba, and Diebel, homogeneous regional local government area. Election was done on the 15th of March, 1996, with Chief Corporal Oromo, His Royal Majesty, the Abakus of Ogbejong, Warri Kingdom, as the local government chairman, and Honorable George Timinimi, my client, at the Supreme Court, as the vice chairman. Now, 2 days after, the headquarters of the local government was relocated from Ogbejong to Ogidigbe. Two electoral wards that were in Warri North were now brought into Warri Southwest. And subsequently, those 2 wards were increased to 6, while the John 10 wards that were existing were increased to 6, were decreased to 4. So you cannot appreciate why the Johns were so disadvantaged and why they went to court. So that was the abnormal situation that existed and decided to put the Johns in a very disadvantageous position. Now, to the concern that the Checkers have raised, which is that, look, with this proposal by INEC and the reality on ground, they may not have the opportunity of producing any position, chairman, House of Assembly, and the rest. I think that first, such a fear ought not to arise if we have been fair to each other. I'm on the way forward, and this is very important. Their fear is because, with respect to them, over the years, they haven't been fair to their neighbors. For example, I'll give you the example of Warri North. Warri North was created in 1991. From the day of creation to date, no Ijaw person has been allowed to go to the House of Assembly. Warri North created in 1991. Up to date, the Ijaws have had the opportunity of being chairman for only 3 years. No Ijaw or Yoruba person, since Warri Federal Constitution came into effect, has gone to the House of Reps. Do you call that fair? So it is what they have done to their neighbors that is not making them to be afraid. But my view is that when you have a multi-ethnic society, they have to be power-sharing arrangement. It doesn't matter whether that person has 1 word or 2 words. My proposal on moving forward in the Warri Federal Constituency is this. Number 1, based on INEC proposal of 18, 19, and 20 ward. It means that, like in Warri North, it is now ripe for more than one constituency. There's need for constituency 1 and 2, which will now provide opportunity for the Johns and the Shekiris to go to the House of Assembly at the same time. The same thing applies in Warri Southwest, that may need up to 3 constituencies, so that both the Johns and the Shekiris at every point will have opportunity. The same thing also in Warri South constituency. Then, with respect to chairmanship, I'm aware, I'm from Warri Southwest. In Warri Southwest, we already have an arrangement, a power sharing arrangement. The Shekiris go twice, the Johns also go twice. In Warri North, because of the arrogance of a few political class, that principle has not been applied. For example, currently there are 2 commissioners representing Warri North in the state cabinet. All of them are from one ethnic group, the Shekiri. Which is wrong.
Mr. Mari.
The same thing, there had to be a power sharing arrangement with respect to the federal constituency as well. You mentioned Senate, that the Shekiris have not had the opportunity of going. I personally think that that is not fair. They need to go there, and the political class need to sit down and work at a framework that will enable, irrespective of your number, to have the opportunity of going to either Senate, House of Reps, House of Assembly.
Mr. Mari, if I may button, my apologies because of time.
Yes.
So some people have also proposed that isn't it time for the structure, the political structure should be such a way that the 3 local government that makes up the federal constituency will just give Urobo people one, give Shekiri people one, and give Warri. Is that an impossibility?
No, 30 seconds. That's perfect. You see, that has been the vision of our founding fathers. Chief Ike Clark, Chief S.Y. Mamamu, Chief Okreka. That has been what they have been agitating for. That group, it should be homogeneous local government. But with due respect, it's the Shekiris that have been always opposed. But if it is doable, if the Nigerian state can help for there to be homogeneous local government areas for these different ethnic nationalities, I think that would be a perfect one. And that's also represents a way forward on this consistent agitation from the Warri area.
All right, Mr. Mari, this is important. This is why we're bringing this conversation to the fore. We don't want things to escalate beyond what it is, because the area sits on part of our national asset, the golden egg of our economy in that sense, and the people are quite important. And we know that you are brothers at the end of the day, all of you. So there has to be a way to resolve this issue. We must thank you so much and for coming on the program. We hope that there will be closure. Everybody will be appeased at some level or the other. Omari Eric is a legal practitioner of the Ijaw ethnic nationality. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozonga. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.